Hello, this is Arielle, the Inconspicuous Bear, and I'll be narrating the 10-man version of the heroic Fallen Protectors encounter in the Siege of Orgrimmar from a Guardian point of view. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to re-explain any of the normal mode mechanics. I'm going to assume that you've watched the normal mode guide for this encounter, and if you haven't, the link will be up probably in the top right hand corner of the screen. All the numbers are going to be bigger, but the mechanics, unless otherwise stated, will be the same. Now, when tanking this encounter, you'll either be on Rook or He, whatever you want to call them. Tanking these guys doesn't really change that much. Rook is still face them away from everyone else, keep him close to Sun for cleave damage, and then kind of just sit in his Fist of Fury conal frontal attack stun thing. And then he is a bit different. You won't need to bring him in and out of the middle of the group where Sun and Rook are, depending on whether or not he has Noxious or Instant Poison. If he has Noxious Poison, you won't need to drag him out of the raid, because leaving poison puddles in the middle for Sun's desperate measures is a very big problem, so you need to avoid doing that. However, if he has Instant Poison, you definitely want to drag him into the middle of the group of the three bosses for extra cleave damage. It's also worth noting that Gouge from He Sunfoot is a little more finicky in the heroic version of the encounter. I guess that finicky is a bit of a wrong word, but if you turn using the keyboard, you'll probably find it's more difficult to turn yourself sufficiently away to prevent being gouged. If you use your mouse for directional movement, it's pretty easy. You just flip yourself around and start walking backwards until he hits you. Or start walking away from him until he hits you, and then flip back around and just pick up the boss again. For Rook's desperate measures, the three mobs that spawn no longer have a shared health pool. If you're the He tank, you're going to be responsible for picking up Misery, who is it's the same as it was in normal mode. You'd avoid, gouge, kill Misery, but the difference being you're going to be killing him by yourself pretty much, which isn't really a big deal because he has no health to begin with. If you are tanking He, generally you will pick up Gloom, so you'll be responsible for interrupting Gloom and then start dragging him to Sorrow, at which point you're probably going to set up some sort of interrupt rotation to make sure the Gloom Shock doesn't go off, because if it does, it's really bad. So make sure you sort that out with your raid before beginning the encounter. He's Desperate Measures is basically exactly the same. The only difference is it's more risky for a tank to soak the Mark of Anguish, because the Rook tank is always going to be active, except during the Desperate Measures phase, and the He tank is going to be tanking two mobs during Rook's Desperate Measures, not to mention extra damage during Suns. So it's generally not a good idea. However, if your raid severely lacks DPS or healers with cooldowns or the ability to soak it, you can do it. I know some tanks just do it anyway, just because, but generally just try and stay away from it if you're progressing on the encounter. The next big change that you'll probably find is that both tanks stay outside of the bubble for Stun's Desperate Measures. The reason for this is if you get a clash in the middle of the bubble, you're basically just going to wipe. So you need to make sure that Rook is far enough away that when he clashes, he just pulls the person outside and then spin kicks only half the bubble instead of the whole bubble. And because of He's Noxious Poison, because having Noxious Poison inside the bubble, as previously stated, is really, really bad. Plus, it's just better if tanks just add DPS to the big mobs. You can also pick up the little mobs with damage over time effects as they spawn too. So, biggest reason for tanks to stay outside. For tanking items, as always, go for the tank legendary meta gem. The DPS one doesn't add enough DPS in this encounter for it to be a big deal. However, you don't really want to go for the tank cloak. There's no single hits that are going to substantially threaten you unless you end up soaking Mark of Anguish. Then it might be a good idea to have the tank cloak from when you're back tanking whatever boss you're tanking. Otherwise, go for the DPS cloak. Typically, the reason people are having trouble progressing on this fight is because of cleave DPS or a lack of cleave DPS, and the cloak adds a ton of that. The talent choices for this encounter are pretty limited. Again, just go with Feline Swiftness or Wild Charge. 50-50 doesn't really matter too much. It's easy to move out of anything you need to move out of already, so Feline Swiftness isn't really too great of a benefit there. I just happen to have Wild Charge most of the time, or usually I still have it left over from Mercius, so I don't bother to switch it for this encounter. So, yeah, there you go. Ysera's Gift. Starting a ward, there's not really too much opportunity to use it, and because this is a sort of a DPS-centric encounter, you want to be filling your globals as much as possible. Renewal, again, as I'm going to continue to state throughout this these guides is pretty much worthless when you reach this type of content because your rage generation is so high. Soul of the Forest or Incarnation, take your pick. I like Incarnation better for the burst DPS on Sun's Desperate Measures specifically, but that's just my personal opinion. For the tier 6 talents, level 90, Dreamer's Nyrus and Nature's Vigil. If you are the He tank, it is possible to get in some Heart of the Wild burst. However, you'll only be able to do it once, and there's 3 of those. So generally, it's not as much benefit. Plus, the extra healing from Nature's Vigil is really useful, especially during stuns, Desperate Measures, when there's constant damage going out. For Guardian-specific notes on this encounter, basically save Berserk for when you have all 3 of the bosses stacked up, i.e. when he has instant poison on. Generally, this happens at the start of the encounter, usually after he's Desperate Measures at some point. Yeah, it's depending on how good your DPS is and depending on how fast you push Desperate Measures. The timing is going to be kind of wonky, but it does happen pretty often, or often enough to make Berserk worth it. I like to save Incarnation specifically for Sun's Desperate Measures, because that's the one that's going to tap your healers the most in terms of mana, so getting it over quickly is much preferable to not, basically. Nature's Vigil, I try to use whenever I'm going to get the most benefit out of it, so lining it up with either Berserk or Incarnation is typically the best option. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please check out the rest of the normal and heroic mode Siege of Orgrimmar raid guides.
Stuff on some.
They're all equal.
Yeah.
GG.
Holy Nether Tempest, Batman.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? Damn arcane mages.
What does Nether Tempest even do?
A
It's like
lot
an
of
AoE.
damage.
Yeah.
Cal, do you want that or no?
Just a dot. Fuck off, Al.
Well, no, but I'm gonna get it anyways.
Yay.